So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Ben 10, so let's start the series. Sasuke! Naruto! Above the Valley of the End, a demonic Naruto and curse mark-bearing Sasuke engaged in a bloody duel of techniques. Naruto was enveloped by a whirlwind of red, Sasuke by a whirlwind of blue, and they were all surrounded by a blinding light. Then the strangest thing occurred. The light changed into a dark orb that swelled slowly, blocking the waterfall and eventually demolishing the statues of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama. Then white lines streaked across the surface, and it burst into light once more, exposing the two boys on the valley floor, unconscious and perfectly normal. Then Naruto abruptly vanished as a green light burst into the valley from the sky. Kakashi noticed Sasuke in the valley, but not Naruto, only a moment after the light went out. Panicked, he glanced around. He screamed, "Naruto? Naruto?" and hoped the youngster was only a few feet away from the explosion and not dead or gone. He called forth his pack of dogs and gave them instructions to find Naruto. Knowing that the traitor would cause trouble when he woke up, he waited for 30 minutes and tied Sasuke up when the dogs dispersed. He realized the reality when the somber-looking canines came back. Naruto was gone. Feeling devastated by his inability to impress his sensei, he picked up Sasuke, threw the pack away, and headed back to Konoha. Somewhere else, Naruto awoke from his slumber and rubbed his aching head, muttering, "Ugh, what hit me?" He looked around and saw that he was in a dark chamber of some kind, that there was a tray of surgical instruments beside the examination table he was on, and that there was a strange black ball above him with green circuitry lines coming from the symbol of an angular green hourglass on a black background with a silver edge. Naruto was startled when an elderly voice said, "I see you're awake." He asked frantically, "Who's there? Where are you? Where am I?" In anticipation of any attack, should this be an ambush. Naruto turned his head to a small platform that floats next to the table and heard the voice say, "Calm down, boy. I'm not your enemy, nor will I ever be. I'm down here." With the help of a cane, a small, gray creature stood on it. He wore green robes with black trim, had a head that was almost frog-like, huge green eyes with rectangular pupils, and a long, white beard that reached the floor. With startled eyes, Naruto questioned, "Whoa, what are you?" "I am an alien called a Galvan. I hail from Galvan Prime in the Andromeda system. Your planet, Earth, is thousands of light years from my home. In the galaxy are various creatures that are greater or lesser than humans. It's all a matter of perspective. I have been keeping my eye on you, Naruto, for an experiment I have in mind," the being said. The news of life beyond the stars caused Naruto's eyes to brighten, but when an experiment was mentioned, they narrowed. "Why should I consent to being experimented on like a guinea pig? And what is this experiment anyway?" he inquired with caution. It wouldn't hurt to know, but he was absolutely not going to say yes. "My brother, Asmuth, and I had a rivalry for inventions. He wanted to create the ultimate device that held the DNA of all aliens. I wanted to make the ultimate life form that had the DNA of all aliens. I was banished from Glavan Prime when I was found with various blood samples of creatures and the Council assumed the worst. My brother fought for my sake, but it was for naught, and I was cast to the stars. However, I haven't done this experiment on others because of the very same reason I believe you are the perfect subject. So many changes would tear someone from the inside out, but as I watched you, I've found many things that will ensure your safety. The demon in your gut, he gives you advanced regeneration. That would be useful to survive the process. and the natural resilience of your clan, combined with your indestructible will to survive, and you are the perfect candidate. And why should you say yes? Simple. You can use this power to save those precious to you. I know that is the most important thing to you. After this experiment, I will ask you for one favor, the final phase of my bet with my brother, then you may do what you wish. I will not take the changes away. I will not keep you as my puppet. I will not limit you in any way. So what do you say? He asked, holding his tiny hand out. Naruto considered the idea for a long time. He would have the strength to defend everyone he cared about, even though there might be strong, unstoppable animals in space. He held out his hand, shook the creature's small hand with his finger, and nodded to the Galvan. So what's your name? You know mine, but I don't yours, he inquired. My name is Merlin, and thank you for agreeing to this. And don't worry, I know you hate needles, so you'll be unconscious and your nerves will be dulled so they won't hurt you. Now please lay down so we may begin. He requested his assistants. The process started when Naruto nodded, lay back, and closed his eyes while the machine above him sent out waves at a specific frequency that knocked him asleep and impaired his sensation of touch. After 3 hours, when Naruto eventually woke up, he gripped his head once more as a lot of unfamiliar thoughts entered his head. It was nearly overwhelming, so many senses, so much information he had never had access to before, and such bizarre worlds flashing before his eyes. He managed to stay conscious, though, by hanging his legs over the edge of the bed Merlin had placed him in following the procedure. He tried to stand up and take his first step, but in a blue blur, he flew across the room and crashed against the wall. He said, "Ow!" But it reverberated so loudly that it broke all the glass in the room and caused spiderweb fractures in the ceiling. That caused his eyes to enlarge, glow green, and emit lasers that pierced the ceiling. Then he just calmly and slowly stood up again, went back to the bed, lay down, and remained still. His body was transformed into a certifiable mummy by the abrupt application of dark brown bandages, which fulfilled his subconscious desire to be restrained so he wouldn't mess up anything else. After a few moments of freaking out, Naruto decided it was better to stop wiggling and wait for Merlin. 5 minutes or so later, Naruto had gone asleep after 2, and Merlin had entered through a hilariously small entrance at the bottom of the regular door. He knew the youngster woke up and his powers went crazy, as was to be expected, when he saw the wrapped Naruto, broken glass, and a damaged wall and ceiling. He leaped onto the bed and tapped the Naruto's head with his cane as he passed over it. As he watched the boy awaken, he said, "Naruto, wake up." However, he was now constrained by the bandages and was unsure of how to remove them. He suggested, "Just relax and they'll go away." Naruto followed his suggestion and slowed his breathing, causing the bandages to disappear. Naruto waited to make sure his voice wouldn't break any eardrums before asking, "What happened when I woke up? If Merlin had any at all?" "Well, from what I can tell, your subconscious human nature to rush everywhere activated the speed of a kinoceleron, the impact with the floor jarred the sonic waves of a sonoerosion right before the eye beams of an amphibian, and your subconscious need to be restrained so you wouldn't smash anything else activated the bandages of a thepkufen," Merlin clarified. Even though all of that information had filled his consciousness when he initially woke up, Naruto gave him a blank stare because he had no idea what any of those things were. Merlin added, "Alien stuff." Naruto nodded as if that satisfied him. He said, "So how do I control this?" Naruto's yell interrupted him as he began. I estimate it will take almost 1,100 years to master all 1 million species abilities. 1,100 years? A million species? He said, the eyes wide with curiosity. How in the world was he going to do that? Relax, I have a special chamber that can help you. My father created it, the hyperbolic time chamber, and for every year inside there, it will be a day out here. In 3 years, you will have accomplished about 1,095.75 years of training. And don't worry about aging and death. Several species have a concept of eternal youth. Once you reach a certain age, you will not age or suffer disease. You can still be killed, but again, several species allow several biological defenses to save you, as well as battle capabilities you will learn in the chamber. Also, he began to pull out a small cube. While you were unconscious, I sent out several drones to scan the jutsu of this world. According to the scanners, this holds the information of apparently every shinobi technique in your world. This will be used in your training as well. And don't worry, I also sent a message to your leader, Tsunade Senju, to explain your situation, and she has given her consent to allow you to be on leave for the next 3 years. Are you ready to begin? He inquired. After giving this some thought, Naruto nodded. He trailed behind Merlin to the simple set of doors that led to the hyperbolic time chamber. At Merlin's request, they were opened because it lacked a galvan-like door, but rather a miniature dog door. When they peered inside, they discovered a huge white chasm and a distant mansion with 2 enormous hourglasses on either side. Knowing that he wouldn't see Merlin for roughly a millennium, he waved goodbye with a shrug, but 3 to the galvan. He closed the doors behind him, but somehow he was already inside the mansion, surrounded by equipment that would help him train and tell him about the different species he now carried inside of him. Near him, a camera on an outstretched arm scanned him. Scanning. Species unknown. Designation: Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Query: Subject has DNA of 1,087 species of organisms. I was designed to help you understand these creatures. Shall we begin? It requested. With a nod, Naruto started his own training hell. Even after he discovered the Kage Bunshin's secret, he still had to learn how to master the various species. The clone's memories came back to him when they dispelled, which included jutsu, chakra control, and intriguing quirks to help with training, but the muscle memory of using his powers didn't transfer, so he had to do those himself. Since this new physical evolution gave him the strongest vessel he could ever have, the Kyuubi helped him train and master his Yuki. He also taught him some fox-specific demon skills. His abilities and alien forms were truly astounding. Aliens arrived in all shapes and sizes, some more lethal than others, from the tiny Galvan to the enormous Custer. His health and abilities improved, but his mind and attitude remained strong as he realized the terrible realities of his life. Sakura was a worthless fangirl who threw herself onto a heartless jerk he once referred to as a brother who attempted to kill him. She would never love him. Although he first disliked Kakashi for teaching Sasuke more than Sakura and himself, he eventually came to appreciate the Jonin's standing within the council. Those jerks detested him and revered the Uchiha. He at last recognized his ancestry as the son of the Yondaime Hokage, the same man who condemned him to this existence, and the villagers were narrow-sighted idiots. He was first upset, but he eventually came to terms with his predicament that night 12 years ago. He also inquired as to why the Kyuubi, whose name he discovered was Kurama, had attacked Konoha. Kurama clarified that he was being controlled by a Manjiki Sharingan of Uchiha Madara, a man the elemental nations believed to be long dead. Just after Naruto was born, the bastard tore him from his mother and sicked him on Konoha, trapping him in a genjutsu. However, Minato swiftly severed their tie and sealed half of the Kyuubi's chakra in Naruto's stomach and half in the Shinigami's stomach. In this instance, Kurama proved to be a useful friend and ally, and Naruto resolved to exact revenge on Madara for creating so much agony, for all the people who perished that day, for using Kurama as a puppet, and for condemning him to a life of social exclusion. However, the rage did not overcome him, and he emerged victorious. Naruto studied ninjutsu and alien powers for 1,000 years. By the time he turned 18, he had stopped aging, and when he perfected the 9th tail, he and Kurama were fully joined. In a sense, Naruto was the new Kyuubi. Time passed, and finally the day arrived for Naruto to leave the chamber. A brand new Naruto walked up to the double doors. Tall, slender, well-built, and superb all around. From his laughable height of almost 5 feet, he was now 6 feet 7 inches, void of body fat. His face was angular, and his eyes were now crimson with slits, showing his merge with Kurama. His hair grew to between his shoulders, 2 bangs framing his face and shadowing his now jagged whisker marks. Having outgrown his horrid orange jumpsuit, Naruto acquired new clothes in the chamber. He actually wore a nanosuit, a fabric made entirely of nanobots that repaired itself and changed its style and colors to suit his personal needs. Right now, it was a form-fitting armored suit with black gloves and boots, white armor on his torso, biceps, hips, and a segmented helmet that had a glowing visor over his eyes. Willing the helmet to open, steam hissed from the sides as the segments collapsed off his head and settled around his neck. He opened the door and walked out, leaving an unfortunately totaled mansion of mechanisms behind him, stepping into the outside world again after 3/1095 years. It was weird saying which because of the time difference. Point was, he was back on the outside, and who better to greet him than the creature that made it all possible? "Hey Merlin! For all this time, what have you been doing?" he said hello to the Galvan. Merlin looked up and grinned at Naruto, who was taking a tiny cup of tea, a human beverage. "Where does the time go, Naruto, my boy? All I've been doing is working on some of my inventions, keeping tabs on my brother's subject for his own development, and keeping an eye on your house." He put down his tea and told the blonde, "A lot has happened since you were gone." "Like what?" Naruto cocked his head in question. "To begin with, your leader, Tsunade, has added her face to the monument of your previous leaders and has told some of your peers about your predicament, or at least a half-truth about it. With the exception of the boy I caught you with and the pink-haired girl who failed to show up, they all handled it well. My drones have shown that the boy has been shunned by his peers for trying to leave the village, that your ANBU is watching him all the time, that his special eyes and chakra are sealed off from him, and that the girl has taken to hiding in her house after receiving a particularly scathing response to her greeting of the boy." He lost some compassion points, at least with the shinobi, and whatever he said sent her away crying. Even after he brought their precious Uchiha, Merlin shook his head at the villagers' perception of Naruto, saying, "The civilians still hold him on a pedestal and blame both you and this Orochimaru for corrupting him. Dear child, how you could stand 12 years of their idiocy is beyond me." Naruto simply snorted. "It's fair. I went to great lengths to win him back for Sakura, so I think they should both suffer." However, based on his response, It seems like Sakura has endured enough, so I might be able to forgive her. It will depend on how she responds when I get back. You may let Sasuke fuck himself. What was the last stage you described before I departed then? He asked, laughing at Sasuke's suffering while considering Sakura's predicament. He no longer had feelings for the Pinkette, but he wasn't going to act like a jerk without cause. Indeed, the last leg of my wager with my brother. I would like you to fight his subject, Ben Tennyson, to see which of our experiments wins before I send you home. He floated over to a blanketed mound on his small platform, grabbed the cloth, and pulled it out to reveal a badge with the Galvan hourglass insignia. I know it's not much to look at, but it's a weapon that will adapt to any alien form you choose and become an appropriate weapon for that form, he said. Because celestial sapiens can practically accomplish anything and Anodites can produce anything from their mana, it doesn't work for them. Even your human form can use it as a weapon, he said. Try it out, and motioned for Naruto to grab it. Thankfully, Naruto learned Kenjutsu within the chamber, both because of several alien powers and for some jutsu from the holocron. He gave it a few experimental swings and found it to be perfect, and then he willed it to return to its badge form and clipped it to his pants. Naruto nodded and picked up the badge and simply stared at it. The hourglass blinked, and the texture of the badge changed to the consistency of a galvanic mechamorph, a black mass with green circuit lines. Fortunately, Naruto could change it to other weapons when he was human. He quipped, grinning foxily, "Well, let's go meet Ben so I can kick his ass. Just go in the escape pod and I'll drop you down." Merlin laughed and had his platform float him to the command terminal, where he gave the order for the ship to proceed to the opposite side of Earth, above Bellwood. With the knowledge of any Galvan ship from the species in his mind, Naruto nodded and proceeded to the escape pod, strapping himself down, and after about 30 seconds, he felt the pod shake and jerk as it was launched from the ship. Fortunately, he was spared the intense heat of re-entry, and the pod would allow him to land without turning into a pile of goo from the G-force inside it. Mr. Smoothie Bellwood, we've all decided that it's unacceptable to hear young girls from space communicating about a conflict on her planet, Ben said, disregarding the somewhat cruel ruling. Oh, I see. Yes, you have a new alien, but ultimately a whole planet despises us. And all of my wealth went to that chick. Kevin hung his head in desperation and groaned. Gwen simply sighed and shook her head at the events that transpired on that far-off planet, which began with a message from a girl named Probity. There was a conflict between the red and blue armies. Ben got a new alien. Ben made some progress before making a foolish decision, and now the entire planet was at war once more, and everyone hated the girl who had initially enlisted their aid. A huge object dropped from the sky and landed perilously near Kevin's car, turning it over and causing it to be wrecked before anyone could change the topic. My vehicle! Kevin hung his head in grief and shouted. Not again. His automobile was cursed. Ignoring Kevin's whining, Ben prepared to activate the Ultimatrix while Gwen charged her projectiles. As the smoke and dust settled, it became clear that the mass was some sort of pod, and the surface facing them started to push out, releasing steam. They were shocked to see a human emerge from the pod as the door lowered, especially since it bore Galvan's symbol. You Ben Tennyson? The blonde teenager inquired. Gwen blushed slightly as she examined the guy from head to toe. Yes, Ben raised a brow in response. I'm Naruto, and I've come to kick your ass. The blonde's straightforward but sly smile made Gwen's blush a little more intense, which infuriated Kevin even more. Why do you believe you can? Ben narrowed his brows and asked. He was prone to overconfidence. To put it mildly, I have a great deal of experience. Let's go now. Instigating, Naruto grabbed his Galvan badge and willed it to transform into a Fuma Shuriken and threw it, just in time for Ben to slam his hand down and transform into a giant, orange humanoid dinosaur. The weapon had black blades with green edges, and the hourglass symbol formed a hand guard over the circle where he held it. Human-sized dinosaur! Ben growled, flinging the weapon back at Naruto after his tough hide deflected it. Ah, Vaxasaurian! How could I have predicted that you would use force right away? Smirking, Naruto said. But with a bit of Galilean, everything big and tall must fall. He raised his hand, and Humongosaur rose in the air against his will and was flung to the side when Naruto flicked his wrist in the same direction. Black cracks appeared across his face and arms, and his hands turned to red-orange stone, glowing with an unidentified blue energy. Kevin ran to his car, changed his hands into a mace and hammer, and ran toward Naruto, determined to smash his smug face in. He was shocked by what had just happened, but he brushed it aside and absorbed the metal of his automobile. And a pair of hybrids, Osmosian and Anodite, quite the colorful gang, Naruto commented as Gwen attempted to herd him towards the berserk Kevin with her bolts, raising his right arm up as it turned green and his fingers fused to 3 bulbous digits, a circle of green energy forming a shield for him, blocking both the bolts and Kevin's steel attacks. Dropping the shield, one of his fingers split into a 4th digit and his arm turned to stone segments, a black wristband with silver spikes forming, as he punched Kevin in the chest, but the size of his fist also affected his stomach, cracking his steel skin and sending him flying. He transformed his other arm to match to block the downward hammer strike from Humongosaur, now twice as tall and covered in segmented armor and spikes, successfully blocking the gargantuan creature's attack, shocking everyone watching, and pushing him back, grabbing his chest and causing green electricity to race across his body, his eyes turning to green light with arcing sparks as he attacked Ben. Ben roared in agony at the shocks that ran through his body, but he was able to kick Naruto off, landing on his back. He sat up, decided to level the playing field, and slammed on the symbol on his chest, changing his form. His hide turned dark green, and he formed a shell-like carapace on his back, a blue plate on his head, chest, and stomach, silver spikes down his head and black ones on his face, silver quills at the sides of his chest and armored stomach, a silver edge, and massive spikes on his shell. His tail grew a blue mace with silver spikes, and he formed silver spikes on his knuckles, turning his hands into barrels that fired rockets at Naruto. Smiling the whole time, the blonde shinobi dodged with ease. More firepower isn't always better. Then again, he began, his head and arms exploding in flames, the latter forming molten plates on his skin, as he threw a giant fireball towards Ultimate Humongosaur, melting his missiles and continuing on its way to the evolved alien, which exploded on impact. Sometimes it is, he concluded, still grinning. He avoided Kevin's actual hammer strike from behind, slamming his mouth shut as he chomped on his steel skin and developed the jaws of a Pisces Volan. He then thrashed him around before hurling him in the direction of Ultimate Humongosaur and slapping his lips. Why does steel taste like coins and copper? He mused to himself. He immediately began to dodge Gwen's barrage of bolts as a blue blur. He then cloaked himself to match the environment and snuck up on her, immediately wrapping her in bandages and lifting her into the air. "Do you yield?" did he ask. After some fight, she paused and sighed, saying, "Fine." By the way, I can feel through these bandages, he said bluntly, grinning as she blushed red when she felt the bandages around her back move a little. He put her down, patted her head, and grinned as her blush nearly matched her hair. He avoided Kevin's crazy rush by swinging his mace hand around and slamming his forehead into Kevin's, turning his head into a gray stone for a moment, and sending him flying. He quickly shifted his head back to normal and shook it, clearing his mind and muttering to himself. Fucking non-sapient species. Acrusticedozer always makes my mind fuzzy, and it's not the completely rocky composition. The blonde merely sighed at his violent jealousy when he was just teasing Gwen and willed a swarm of yellow snake heads to sprout from his back, all equipped with Pisx's jaws, as they snapped at Kevin and tore off his steel skin, tossing him aside and leaving him defeated. Kevin returned with a vengeance right away, wanting to smack Naruto's head off. Naruto craned his neck as far as it could to gaze at the enormous evolved Tucuster, and when Ben finally appeared, he transformed from Ultimate Humongosaur to Way Big, instantly going Ultimate. Well, Kuchios no Jutsu, he said, sighing as he slammed his hands together into seals and said, "Shit." He shouted, causing a huge cloud of smoke to form, and as it dissipated, he materialized on Gamabunta, who was marginally shorter than Way Big. Gamabunta's only response as he gazed up at the red, white, and blue extraterrestrial was, "Kamidamit Gaki, what have you led me to?" With a sigh, he inquired. "All I ask is that you restrain him. I intend to defeat him in a single blow." Naruto questioned the boss toad. Gamabunta nodded and sighed once again. "All right. But after this, you have another barrel of sake, not the human kind, but mine type. Suetun, Teppadama," he affirmed, putting his webbed hands together in a seal. Still reeling from his opponent's unexpected summoning of a big frog, Ultimate Way Big skidded back, unprepared for the elemental attack, as he screamed and spat out enormous water pellets. Yeah, you greedy drunk," Naruto replied, gathering chakra in both hands and calling forth 2 clones to help him with them. Although he was able to master the Rasengan to the point where he could conjure it instantly with one hand, he needed a clone and time for his plan, and his focus faltered when Gamabunta leaped to the side to avoid Ultimate Way Big's massive beam attack. He was done by the time Gamabunta landed, and used the Toad Boss's head as a springboard, growing a pair of amphibian wings to continue towards the transformed Tennyson's face, brandishing a pair of elemental Rasengan. The left one headed for Way Big's fire-surrounded face, and the right one with 4 points of wind chakra. "Katon, Kasai no Kohai o Uzumaki!" he shouted, hurling the spiraling ball of fire in Way Big's direction before hurling the second Rasengan into the Tucuster's stomach. "Futon, Raisin Shuriken!" Fire release, swirling fire devastation. The force of both attacks knocked Way Big over, and he changed back to Ben when he landed. The boy's face was a little red from the fire's aftereffects, and his stomach scratched up a little, but nothing dangerous or enough to draw blood. He'll just be really sore. The flaming Rasengan struck Way Big, scorching his tough skin and spinning around his head for a while. The Raisin Shuriken struck his stomach, expanding into a huge dome of needles. As the only one still alive, Gwen was astounded at what this youngster had done. He had just destroyed Kevin and Ben's toughest alien with wild attacks straight out of a comic book. Gamabunta said, "It looks like I'm done here. See ya later, Gaki." As Naruto touched down next to Gwen, Gamabunta vanished in a puff of smoke. Naruto turned to Gwen and grinned at her while waving at the toad, taking pleasure in her perplexity. How did, why did, where did, Her head began to ache from the questions she wanted to ask, so Gwen grasped it. Relax, Red. Since you hang around with Ben, I'll presume you're Gwen Tennyson, Naruto inquired. Gwen nodded and groaned, rubbing her temples. Naruto laughed once more, divided into triplets, and got them to pick up Ben and Kevin as he went to the older teen's wrecked car, his hands glowing with a dusty yellow energy as he engulfed the wreckage in an orb of the energy, and the mess twisted as if it were time reversed, eventually reforming Kevin's perfectly fine car, which he set down. The duplicates placed Ben and Kevin at the table where the three teenagers had been sitting before Naruto arrived to deliver the smack. Okay, how did you do that? Ben held his head in desperation at his defeat, and Naruto smirked as the lads awoke and decided not to try to fight him again. Did he ask? Kick your ass? Naruto smirked as he asked. Stop talking! How did you do all those transformations? Ben yelled, holding his face in frustration. Ben tried to think. It's like you have an Omnitrix, but you are it. When Naruto finally responded, he nodded and said, That's basically how it is. I possess the abilities and powers of every species in the cosmos since I was spliced with their DNA. Along with my own abilities from my origins, I also possess knowledge about every species, including its advantages and disadvantages, he clarified. The concept of all species in one body was mind-blowing, and Team Ben was in awe. How is your body not imploding? Ben inquired. On a personal level, I have improved longevity and high regeneration. My body is inherently stronger than most people's, and because of my many extraterrestrial abilities that can heal most wounds, including severed limbs, I'm not sure what could kill me. Though maybe it wouldn't be a huge deal, Naruto ended up speculating, stroking his chin in gloomy contemplation at the prospect of his own death. I'm sure destroying my brain would kill me, though. He talked about his death as though it was the weather, and all three teenagers started to perspire. Gwen said, Who did this to you? She said, I'm positive you didn't hurt yourself. I take it that all three of you know who made the Omnitrix, Azmuth? Well, after a fierce battle close to my homeland, his brother Merlin found me and, after getting my consent, he injected me with the DNA and allowed me to use a chamber their father made to train in my alien abilities as well as the arts of my people, Naruto said, receiving nods. I am 15 years old chronologically, but I am 1,110 years old physically. He went on to say, The chamber allowed me to train in 1095 years in just 3. Azmuth never mentioned a brother, Ben said, surprised by the apparent age of the victor, but intrigued when he brought up the arts of his people. Comprehensible. We had an agreement that once I used the chamber, I would come here and fight you to see which of the two brothers had the superior project, which is why I'm here. Naruto reiterated. The Galvan Council questioned Merlin's methods of retrieving all this DNA, and although Azmuth defended him, he was exiled from the planet, and they hadn't spoken since. So, what will you do now? And what's this about your people's art? At last, Kevin added his voice. I'll most likely return to my native continent to take care of affairs there. Regarding the arts, the people from my hometown are born with a source of energy known as chakra, which is a blend of spiritual and physical energy. We can manipulate the elements, climb walls, walk on water, and do a lot of other amazing things using chakra. Naruto went on with his talk, growing weary of elaborating. Gwen squinted at these abilities, thinking that they might be the result of another human-alien pairing, possibly a celestial sapien. Returning to the topic at hand, she took a plumber badge from her skirt pocket, which is an interstellar organization of peacekeeping and alien secrecy, and gave it to Naruto, who accepted it, saying, "That's so you can call on us for help. Since you'll be sending out many signals that some species may identify as a beacon to come when you use your powers, it's possible that some aliens will start to appear in your region of the Earth, just as they do here. If we need your assistance, we also ask that you come here," Gwen said to the blonde. With a smile on his face, Naruto combined the badge with his amorphous weapon, absorbing it and incorporating its technology into the tissue of the mentally linked galvanic mechamorph so that it could continue to communicate, so establishing Naruto as an unofficial plumber. "Give me a call, and I'll try my best." A final two-fingered salute was given before Naruto vanished in a flash of kineceleran speed, racing through Bellwood and the surrounding states until he reached the U.S. West Coast and crossed the water to Asia and the elemental nations. In reality, it would seem as though Naruto vanished from the earth, but his chakra enabled him to pass through a pseudo-portal that transported him to an overlaying plane of existence on Earth that housed the elemental nations, rather than the normal Earth that most people know. Naruto sped past Mizu no Kuni and struck the mainland of Hai no Kuni before taking to the trees in the traditional shinobi fashion. He then proceeded to the gates of Konoha, signing the clipboard of a stunned Izumo and Kotestu, and leaped across the rooftops in the direction of the Hokage Tower, which appeared to those below as a blur of black and white. With his helmet up, Naruto stunned Tsunade by phasing through the wall and landing in the center of the room while floating close to the window using his ectonurite powers. "Who are you? If you invaded Konoha and broke into the Hokage's office, can you give me one solid reason not to beat the living daylights out of you?" Tsunade sprang to her feet and demanded. "For starters, I'm not sure if I'll still die if my head is severed, but I'm not willing to try. In addition, Bachan, do you not recognize me?" Speaking via the helmet, Naruto's tone somewhat changed as he asked. Tsunade clenched her teeth in anger. No one had called her that since he had, but it gave her hope to hear someone use that name. "Who are you?" Almost in a whisper, she asked. Naruto pretended to open his helmet, the hissing steam heightening the tension as the panels gradually dropped, and then his face appeared, grinning foxily at his grandmother figure, his eyes gentle as he extended his arms, saying, "Hey, Bachan." Her body trembled and tears poured from her eyes as she walked shakily towards Naruto, clutching his arms as though to make sure he was real and sending out a chakra pulse to break any genjutsu. Her tears doubled when the armored blonde was still there, and she almost crushed him in a relieved hug, their heads level as she laid hers on his shoulder, her body racking with sobs. Fortunately, Naruto was not hurt by her strength, so he hugged her back and closed his eyes as he let her cry it all out. He stroked her hair and back in a soothing manner while channeling a combination of chakra and the life essence of a pyroavian, a bird-like offshoot of the pyronite species that evolved to grow wings to go off-world in order to escape the Crustacedosaur predator of the elemental species. The combination of energies allowed Tsunade to regain some of her youth, making her beautiful genjutsu a reality. She gasped and took a step back, looking at the crimson wave of energy in her stomach and rippling across her body. Before she could question Naruto about what he did, he touched a finger to the center of her collarbone with his opposite hand in the Torah seal. "Kai," he said with a smile. Tsunade noticed she didn't change before she could punch him in the face for dispelling her genjutsu. She opened the Hokage's scrying orb, looked at her reflection, and discovered that she didn't change when she dispelled the genjutsu herself, trying it just in case Naruto was bluffing. Her body felt rejuvenated, stronger, more resilient, and younger. Your body was revitalized by me, Bacha, Naruto tried to clarify, but Tsunade almost threw him to the ground in an embrace before getting up and carrying him with her. She was very grateful to him, wearing the widest smile, and tried to break his back with the force of her embrace. After begging for mercy, as even his amalgamous DNA couldn't withstand her Herculean strength, Naruto was set free and laid on the floor for a bit in pain before explaining where he went for so long. Tsunade was shocked at the idea of aliens and the Western civilizations being so advanced, as well as the prospect of Naruto knowing every jutsu in existence, hypothesizing that any Kekkei Genkai requiring techniques were compensated with an alien facsimile that allowed him those certain abilities. With the amazingly diverse abilities of aliens on the table, stuff like X-ray vision and 360-degree vision or preflexes and photographic memory were probably available among the stars in more than a few places. Filing that away for now, Tsunade formally welcomed Naruto back to Konoha and promoted him to Chunin on the spot, citing his salvation of the village during the exams by fighting Gaara, and by proxy, the Ichibi no Tanuki, as well as completing the A-rank mission of finding a successor for the Hokage and fighting off an S-rank missing Nin and his Jounin/ANBU level minion, and returning the Uchiha to Konoha as well as the experience he technically acquired from within the hyperbolic time chamber. Well over 1,000 years, he was more than deserving of the rank. If the council complained, fuck them. Following the smell of tomatoes and ash with the senses of a Volpomancer, Naruto thanked her, had his nanosuit absorb the vest and incorporate it into the design, and then made his way to the apartment Sasuke was demoted to after returning to the village, his ownership of the Uchiha compound given up, and any assets he owned liquidated. To surprise Sasuke, Naruto landed in front of the door, put his helmet back on, knocked, and waited. When no one arrived, I knocked once more. But then again. Then, to make sure whoever was inside heard, he hammered his fist against the door. He finally heard stomping footsteps heading for the door, and the entrance swung open to reveal a furiously irate Sasuke. He was glaring hotly at whoever had failed to understand that he didn't want to be bothered, only to be confronted by an armored figure, his helmet's faint neon slits shining on Sasuke's face. "Who are you? When someone refuses to answer the door, do you not understand?" For the millionth time, Sasuke screamed at the stranger, threatening to turn this commoner into a heap of ash if Tsunade didn't seal his chakra. "Team, don't you recognize me?" Naruto reminded the Uchiha. "I brought you to heel like the dog you are only 3 years ago." He was incredibly amused by his former teammate's shocked expression before it changed into burning wrath. "Naruto," before trying to bull-rush the blonde, Sasuke shouted. However, the Jinchuriki sidestepped him, grabbed his shirt collar as he passed, and threw him back into his house, breaking a little cabinet that had nothing of value to the Uchiha. Sasuke quickly got back up and ran at Naruto, using his shinobi skills to swing his fist and take off Naruto's head, even though his chakra was sealed. He would have succeeded if Naruto hadn't been either A, wearing a helmet, B, nearly indestructible with his new powers, or C, intelligent. As the Uchiha gritted his teeth in agony at his wrist and the crushing grip around his throat, Naruto brought his leg up and kicked the fist away, breaking Sasuke's wrist. He then swung his palm forward and grabbed Sasuke by the throat, raising him to eye level. What do you want, Ak? D-dobe? Grind out, Sasuke said. "I just came to say hi to an old friend, is that so wrong?" Naruto said, drawing his face closer and lowering his helmet to meet Sasuke's eyes with a nearly sadistic smile. He said this before letting Sasuke fall to the ground and crouching down, his hands glowing yellow and fusing into 3 fingers, his feet flashing a molten yellow, and his shins forming red slabs of cooled magma. He then shot into the sky in a trail of fire, flipping in midair to float above the village, with angelic wings bursting from his back to keep him aloft. Although all Similaris had 3 fingers and blonde hair, the wings were made of light from their bodies. Similaris Asin were angelic humanoids that were superficially similar to humans, but were actually made of light, which they refracted to give them an appearance based on their minds. During times of war, however, the naturally peaceful species could use light in a variety of ways, but they never killed, only incapacitated or reduced the enemy's vehicles and weapons to scraps. After observing the village for a while, Naruto quickly went to his residence and started making the necessary changes to make it, well, not terrible. Using the combined intelligence of Galvans and cerebrocrustaceans, Naruto created the device required for his plans using a silver, goo-like substance from his hands, which was actually millions upon millions of nanobots. The device was actually Gallifreyan in origin, and the technology was dimensionally transcendental, making the door a portal to the new apartment, which existed in a separate dimension, similar to how the elemental nations did to Earth. It was larger on the inside, to put it simply.